The first Demon King ruled for 1,000 years until an unknown figure defeated him, causing him to lose his throne. Rumors say it has been 7 days since the Demon King was replaced. The royal family has begun assembling brave warriors to eliminate the new ruler before he gains power. This presents a golden chance to become the hero who defeated the Demon King. A new legend will be forged, thanks to this boy. We arrive at the City of Arms, where one of the knights is greeting the new warriors. He expresses gratitude for their presence and announces that only one will be chosen to face the Demon King. The sole survivor of this duel will earn the honor of teaming up with the strongest archer. A mage captures him and a healer to decapitate the Demon King. They must fight to the death and survive. In the crowd, where a blond man stands, a loud noise erupts, and a man in uniform appears in the Blue Blossom Club. The crowd cheers, welcoming the commander of the Night Squad. The surprises continue as another brute joins the guy. An unbeatable Mark, obsessed with war, taunts the blonde, calling him a brat, and tells him he belongs in the public area and should leave if he doesn't want to get hurt. The leader of the Knight's Guard agrees, incredulous that such a young one is in the dueling square. The boy merely grins and replies that taking subordinates to a place where only one warrior is chosen doesn't reflect knightly pride. This infuriates the men, causing them to charge at the teenager with a gun. While he considers it slightly dangerous, he then stomps his foot on the ground, adopting a stance so powerful that the floor shatters into fragments, and the shockwave lifts his opponents and their subordinates into the air. The blonde seizes the sword's hilt and leaps up, striking everyone midair with a single, sharp movement. The squad leader in the bar lies on the ground, while the squad of heroes and the gray-haired knight stand in shock, not comprehending what just happened, as the crowd cheers, calling the kid cool. The herald is the first to recover, his eyes lighting up at the spectacle. He praises the hero's amazing skills and asks for his name. With a satisfied smile, the hero replies that his name is Hans. The knight promptly appoints him as the commander of the Demon King's destruction squad. Meanwhile, a dark-haired man with bright yellow eyes watches from the castle window. A servant asks his opinion on the event, to which he replies that the boy seems useful and should be sent for now. We then see the entrance to the Demon King's castle as the squad heads straight there. While Hans starts to get suspicious, the security is far weaker than expected. Normally, the Demon King's forest is impenetrable due to a powerful barrier. However, grenades argue that the new ruler might be working on the dump, or has exhausted his strength taking over the previous king's throne. Hans is pleased about this as it makes their task easier. Otherwise, they could have been stuck there much longer. The archer gets distracted, noticing the healer lagging behind. She calls out to the hooded guy, calling him a jerk and urging him to hurry up. Despite giving a buff, he can at least walk properly now. The magician also comments, saying that the healer being scared indicates they made a poor choice. Hans, noticing the commotion, quickly reassures everyone. A healer is essential for the team. The healer, however, suddenly freezes, and Kadam realizes something is wrong behind them. He turns his head and sees a huge golem towering over them, immediately calling the warrior to turn around. They don't have enough time to react. Hans only manages to turn his head before being thrown aside by a giant stone hand. Fortunately, he manages to shield himself with his sword at the last moment. The magician quickly takes a stance, fireballs forming in his palms, and the girl draws her bow, preparing to attack. But for some reason, they freeze in place as if waiting for something. The healer tightens his grip on his book before Kadam snaps at him. He urgently needs to cast a buff but stands frozen like a pillar. Pinned to the stone wall by the golem's force, Hans shouts for them to stop wasting time and start the attack immediately. The hooded man remains silent and motionless, while the magician combines 2 fireballs into one massive fireball, and the archer draws the bowstring tighter and releases, sending the arrow to merge with the magic flame. The combined attack heads straight for the golem, knocking the monster back and making it stagger, prompting the warrior to act. The blonde leaps up, clutching his sword, and his weapon lights up with a bright yellow glow as he charges at the slowly falling golem. Gripping the handle tightly, Han swings and with a precise blow, splits the monster in half, causing it to crumble into countless stones. Standing up, he smiles, clearly pleased with his victory, and turns to report to the squad that the guards were still present, but then sees Kadam grabbing the healer by the chest, furious that he did nothing, despite it being his duty to buff the heroes during battle. The magician assures that they will deal with the healer when they return home, as the blonde runs up and asks his friend to calm down. Maybe the healer was just confused, but as soon as the hooded man is released, he starts laughing loudly, mocking them and calling the heroes scum for not being able to destroy such a golem without buffs. Agnes calls him crazy, pointing out that the monster was clearly a level 1 in size. Don't healers even learn that? The guy keeps laughing and then extends his hand, showing the squad a small stone in his palm. What has been destroyed now barely counts as this cobblestone. The girl remains tense, not understanding his nonsense, mentioning that he endowed the stone with buffs like vital energy and gigantism, increasing its strength. But what if these buffs were used on a huge cobblestone? Pointing to the cluster of stones, he uses his abilities, and a purple circle appears near his palm, with rays framing the entire silhouette of the stones. The squad freezes in shock as another golem rises from the pile of boulders in front of them, much larger than the previous one. The healer removes his hood, revealing his pale face, snow-white hair, and scarlet eyes to the heroes. He wonders aloud what level this new monster is. The unfortunate caught guy can only mumble something about mercy before a huge stone fist splashes his body into the ground. Han stands frozen in shock, near the enormous fist, unable to speak. The white-haired healer asks Beta to open the door, and a portal appears in front of him. When asked about the warrior, the healer orders to leave him since he is irrelevant to their goals before stepping into the portal. Once inside, he sits on the throne while being praised for his great job, and is simultaneously addressed as the Demon King. His memories go back to the day his father returned from the war. Among the groups returning from the dungeons to people's applause, some were injured, but his father came back as a corpse. No one mourned. No one. At 12, he became a healer with Maddie. The team members received more injuries than the monsters, but he persisted. He had no other job to support his family. It seemed Maddie also worked as a healer for her family's sake. They comforted each other, trying not to lose hope day by day. One evening, while the boy and girl sat peacefully looking at the night sky, a red-haired bully, a warrior from their squad, called out to him. He grabbed the white-haired boy by the chest, complaining about the buffs, and showed a cut, accusing the healers of incompetence. The boy responded without hesitation, giving him the maximum buff and a barrier, but was slapped in the face and knocked to the ground. The warrior was clearly displeased, questioning if the healer thought they were equal just because they were on the same team. If the healer couldn't do anything besides buffs, he should at least apply them properly. If he didn't like it, he could challenge the warrior to a duel and put all his buffs on the line. The beaten boy only glared at him with a menacing look in his scarlet eyes. He doesn't have time to react when he sees the toe of a metal shoe aimed at his face. The red-haired man is furious that some freak dared to look at him with defiance, while the same freak is nearly unconscious from the blow's force. The warrior grabs the teammate by the hair, swinging and accusing him of lacking manners when the master is speaking, while the rest of the squad remains silent behind him. The knight continues his tirade, declaring that a mutt who grins at his master must die. But just as his fist is about to make contact, it is stopped by someone else's hands in time. The beaten hero sees Maddie shielding him with her body, apologizing profusely and promising it won't happen again. The fist still pressed against her. She remains tense, ready to take the blow at any moment. A nasty smile appears on the red-haired man's face as he grabs her hand and asks if she'll apologize for him, then begins to drag her away. The brown-haired woman resists, ordering Tom to let her go and stop, and the main character breaks away to follow them but is stopped by an archer. The archer points an arrow at him, ordering him not to move. Healers cannot harm warriors, and if he makes a mistake, they can easily kill him. The arrow is right in front of his nose, and a variety of thoughts swarm in his head. Kill. No, Maddie's there. He can't let that happen. He just has to save her. He twitches to the side and runs, ignoring the threat. Before stopping near the stairs, blinking in surprise, the girl, with tears in her eyes, smiled at him as she left with the warrior. The boy remained seated, in complete shock. The night gradually gave way to a cloudy morning, and he still stared at one spot until he heard a sound. He immediately perked up, hopefully calling out for his girlfriend. Turning to the team that went outside, the warrior asks if he's really been hanging around there all those hours. The healer doesn't answer, only muttering one thing, Maddie. Where is she? The red-haired man apologizes with the same vile smile, and then says that she resisted too much, so he hit her once, and Maddie screamed and died. Tears gush from his eyes, and he still couldn't figure out how it happened. A girl from the team whispered something in the knight's ear before he pronounced a verdict. They were kicking him out of the team and would have to find other healers. He wondered how the downtrodden blonde thought he would cope alone with what two of them couldn't do. The team turns around and leaves, saying goodbye while the hero shakes with tears, resting his palms on the floor. What bastards! They are murderers, and with the tears, blood begins to drip onto the stone slabs. He clenches his hands into fists, biting his lip until it bleeds, trying to restrain sobs. In this way, he'll just kill them. Both healers still whole. Look up at the night sky. The young man notices that it is very beautiful, and he would be happy just admiring the stars with Maddie all his life. The girl responds in kind and then adds one. But, at the same second, it's not the same pretty brown-haired woman who turns to the guy, but a skeleton with small clusters of former hair who asks why he didn't save her. The healer immediately jumps out of bed, breathing heavily and grabbing his blanket with trembling hands. Before lowering his head down, it's just a nightmare. He plunged into research. Food or sleep were not important to him. Without studying magic, he began to have nightmares. So the hero began to explore it like a madman. Blueprints after blueprints, a variety of spells and buffs. He was completely distraught. 5 years passed, and when all his research finally came to an end, a brutal desire for revenge filled his mind to the brim again. His palm reaches for the door handle, but immediately stops when the ghostly Maddie calls out to the young man. Where is he going? The guy just orders her to wait, as he has found a way to take revenge on that freak and bring her back to life. She keeps trying to dissuade him because if he leaves, he may die. But the blonde one doesn't really care, so his silhouette soon disappears behind the doorway. And he himself promises to return soon. Already closer to night, his foot sets foot on the familiar land of the Demon Kingdom. And already at the top of the castle, there is the king himself. He launches himself from the rooftop and heads straight for the protagonist. He tells him that being the first to come here alone is commendable. But is he truly alone? The healer conjures a large pink circle adorned with numerous symbols on the stone floor. Initially, this causes the demon to smirk. Suddenly, a bony hand breaks through the ground, followed by a complete skeleton with burning scarlet eyes. More skeletons soon emerge behind him, some wielding swords. He is not alone at all. Flavius' bony face betrays nothing, but he edges closer, clearly intrigued. One of the skeletons strikes at the demon when he draws near. The undead seizes him by the skull. With a tight grip, the top of his head crumbles into dust. Another undead servant rushes towards the king. Swinging his sword, he manages to pierce another's chest, catching them off guard. The latter fails to react in time. Just a second later, the lord draws his weapon and swiftly cuts the 3 undead in half with a single strike. They crumble into bones, but the others continue to advance, swelling their ranks. Assessing the situation, the demon vanishes from the skeleton's view. He reappears right in front of one and swiftly shatters its skull with a blow. Immobilizes the second by pinning him to the ground, grasping the back of his head. fractures the third cervical vertebrae. The resurrected undead continue their relentless advance, converging on him in a massive swarm from all directions, even leaping down from above to pile onto the Lord's substantial frame. The healer realizes they are endless, those he had dispatched now rushing back at him. Then, the bones scatter in all directions, a bright blue glow emerging between them, stunning the hero, the glow ascending into the sky. A shockwave scatters the skeletons, leaving the poor man struggling to stay on his feet amidst the gust of wind and power. Through the light, the unscathed Lord emerges, seemingly unfazed. It appears the onslaught is inconsequential to him alone. Did he truly believe such tricks could affect him? Astonished, the man hurriedly flips through his book, finding what he needs and extending his palm, from which a pink magical symbol promptly forms, directed at one of the skeletons. The skeleton is bathed in the same colored glow, and boulders start to levitate towards it, adhering and fashioning semblances of muscles and skin, resembling stone armor. The Lord scoffs, calling it a mere golem, essentially a skeleton beneath the surface. Nonetheless, it remains ordinary cobblestone. The hero questions his certainty before. The risen creature charges towards the Lord, roaring and blazing, and upon reaching the skeletal figure, delivers a powerful blow to another's chest. Fortunately or unfortunately, the demon intercepts with his hand, blocking the attack. The momentum uses the volcanic terrain of their surroundings. At the moment the master realizes this, the golem's fist, made from ordinary cobblestone, begins to heat up to extreme temperatures, enveloping the Dark Lord's entire body in heat, causing him to recoil. A fiery haze and a minor explosion indicate the failed attempt at the attack. The demon observes with keen interest. It's all very intriguing. The golem raises its head toward the floating king, propelling itself off the ground, coming face to face with the same bony visage, then raising its hand to strike, mirroring its opponent. Their fists collide, sending a shockwave that rends a section of the sky. Subsequently, the demon withdraws his other hand and drives a fist into another's cheekbone. He repeats the blow from the opposite side, systematically dislodging the golem's components while still airborne. The hero watches each shockwave until 3 bright blue lights appear on the ground. Meanwhile, the demon silently growls, jaw clenched, striking a servant's solar plexus, hurling the stunned golem towards the ground. Several more strikes follow, further incapacitating the golem before it. Crashes into the stones, immobilized and unable to move. The Lord aims his palm at his target, conjuring a blue orb. The man's ally struggles to rise, but is futile as the same beam targets him, disintegrating his body into dust and successfully reaching the blonde, who erects a shield with his book's aid. In an instant, the demon appears beside him, sharp claws tearing into the barrier, piercing through. Is that all he's capable of? The shield shatters into fragments, leaving the man defenseless as the undead advance, claiming it's insufficient. The healer grins. Is that so? For distinct golems materialize behind him. He prepared a few more. Thereafter, the battle's terrain is engulfed in clouds of dust and debris, within which the demon breathes heavily yet manages a laugh. As the haze settles, more golem corpses litter the ground, unable to fulfill their task. He later senses a newfound lightness in his body, an increase in power like never before. Yet the hero's voice interrupts, suggesting something is amiss, while the king's gaze turns towards his castle. Strangely, a boy's silhouette appears on the balcony, though he stands directly before him. The mystery deepens. If he hasn't realized the intruder in his castle, the fight isn't so simple for him. The demon erupts in rage, denouncing him as the final pawn he merely toyed with. He has already overstepped his boundaries. How could this insignificant man dare to enter his castle? The audacity of breaching those walls. He must pay with his own life. The demon stomps the ground with such force that it crumbles beneath his paws. Having toyed enough here, Flayed, aka instantly calms down, not really comprehending others' questions. Before the blonde raises his hand up towards the moon itself, and then swiftly lowers it, causing another pink symbol to materialize beneath it, enveloping the king and causing him to writhe. His blue irises abruptly shift to pink as the hero approaches, wondering why he suddenly feels so light. All because the boy cast a buff on him so that the demon could combat his creations. It wasn't mercy from the king, but from the man himself towards the Lord. He had his fun. That's why he's exerting all his strength now, nearing almost to the dumbfounded king. He touches his torso with his fingers and then says a simple goodbye. We see the corridors of the demon's castle. Someone is running, noticeably out of breath, and continuously calling for the king as they approach the massive door. As soon as it opens, someone rushes in. While our familiar hero sits on the throne, looking at the newcomer with his usual weariness. The owl calls out to him, proclaiming that he has discovered the whereabouts of those three and where they are now. The man's pupil instantly narrows as his brain processes the awareness of what is happening. A millennium ago, a new member of the royal family proposed a decree concerning healers. A healer must provide buffs to allies. A healer must apply debuffs to enemies. A healer can use buffs on themselves. The aim of this law was to establish boundaries on the use of powers by omnipotent healers. However, it was also intended to deter jealousy from those in other professions, with strict punishments for disobedience. Over time, healers began to comply with these new regulations. High-ranking healers opted to assist travelers by crafting healing and buff elixirs instead of joining battles. Lower-ranking healers, deemed less useful, were often treated as expendable resources. Snapping out of his reverie, the same owl calls out to him, questioning if the king had been listening. He had found their enemies. The new king acknowledges that he was indeed listening, just lost in thought for a moment. The owl requests permission to begin the report, proceeding with details about the archer named Jude. At present, Jude and his new team are on an expedition to the dragons. And then comes Bibi, the castle's magical commander who oversees an elite army of around 30 wizards. Lastly, there's Bask, who leads a guild comprising 50 warriors. The man remains silent for a moment before uttering just 3 names. Beth kills Rock. Immediately, 3 pairs of eyes appear behind the owl, attentively listening to the king. He gives a straightforward command to capture all 3, while the chick itself is visibly nervous, unaware of their presence behind him. The blonde insists that he doesn't care if there are casualties in the process, except for healers. The elixir he held in his hand shatters on the floor, leaving immediate red stains. They are to be brought before nightfall and made to kneel before him. 3 comply, hesitant to oppose the king. Meanwhile, near the dragon's habitat, a bowman in a village strides purposefully with his team. 2 comrades discuss the dragon's unusually vicious behavior today, anticipating higher pay. After such a tough day, they decide they deserve a drink, having not had a sober day in ages. Passing an alley, amidst discussions of future plans, crimson eyes gleam in the dark. Sensing something awry, Jude swiftly turns toward the narrow passage, finding nothing but emptiness. Grasping his bow, he draws the string, aiming into the alley. Before a voice calls out, asking what's wrong and if there's something there. Ignoring the archer, he orders the figure hiding in the alley to reveal themselves, sensing a potent lethal presence. Emerging from the darkness, someone asks incredulously if he truly managed to detect them, as expected from the most seasoned archer in the region. Well, once you're spotted, there's no going back, they acknowledge resignedly. They look startled as a true emissary of the devil appears before them, proclaiming that their master wishes them dead. As a servant of Demon King Beth, she advises them to accept their fate with humility. Chaos reigns in the castle where the magicians reside. Voices clamor for Mrs. Beebe, urgently reporting the complete destruction of the magic barrier. The girl finds it hard to believe. After all, she crafted it herself. But who could breach such defenses? A breathless man approaches her, barely managing to alert her that there is only one assailant. Meanwhile, The Demon King's emissary calmly dispatches a red-haired wizard with a wand, smiling contentedly as she strides towards the castle. At the guild stronghold's entrance, the guards begin to converse. They ponder why they stand guard day after day, seemingly accomplishing nothing, until one of them notices a figure approaching in the distance. The second guard squints, about to ask a question, when suddenly, a massive blue ray bursts through the door between them, shattering the wood and catching everyone inside off guard. Smoke billows into the corridor as the guard nearest the target yells for everyone to be on alert. The startled knights grab their weapons, eyes fixed on the thickening smoke, when suddenly a hand bursts forth, grabbing one of the men by the face and dragging him inside in an instant. A cry for help echoes briefly before all falls silent, and something rolls out from the dissipating smoke ahead. Approaching cautiously, one of the guards lifts his head as a knock echoes from within the dissipating smoke. Moments later, a third servant of Demon King Rock emerges, his hand bloodied, asking if the redhead is the one they seek. Confronted by the redhead's gaze, he immediately inquires if he's the target. The redhead responds calmly, questioning his intentions and why he has come, considering his notorious reputation. With a smile, the servant reveals he's been ordered to capture him alive. Capture him alive? Is he certain that's feasible? Springing off the floor with a clawed paw, he challenges or else, before rushing towards the seated guild commander. Suddenly, a green-haired man appears before him, swinging his sword and declaring that Rock won't dare to approach. Rock merely laughs, instructing the young man to step aside. He then withdraws his hand and swiftly strikes through another's body, catching them off guard. The shocked subordinates freeze in place, crying out for their vice commander. The vice commander himself is incensed by the brutal act. Seizing his sword, he lunges forward as Rock tosses the lifeless body aside. A powerful blow follows, aimed to cleave Rock in two, but he manages to block it with both hands just in time. Warriors rally behind their commander, praising his unwavering resolve. The redhead leaps aside, sword swinging, aiming a series of strikes. Each time, Rock effortlessly blocks their attacks with just his bare hands. Eventually, as the base prepares to strike again, the elderly man swiftly leans down and gestures towards the commander, who manages to evade by bending sideways. Now it's the Demon King's servant's turn to attack relentlessly, attempting to seize the elusive opponent with his clawed hands, but he continuously evades and deflects with a sword. Instead of another swing, Rock lifts his leg, bending at the knee, and then swiftly extends it, driving his foot into someone else's chin. Caught off guard, the base unwittingly gives him another opening for an attack, which he exploits by spinning around his axis, resulting in a bright spot appearing in the middle of another person's chest, from which numerous cracks radiate. The blond man strikes precisely there, causing the armor to shatter into fragments. The commander's body is thrown a couple of meters away as a result. Thankfully, he manages to remain on his feet, despite being winded and blood flowing from his mouth. Already worn out, Rourke asks in frustration, expressing a desire for more amusement, but then realizes he must return swiftly, signaling it's time to take the battle more seriously. The other warriors observing the fight are visibly surprised by the revelation that he hasn't been using his full strength. So what more is he capable of? Basque notices a scent of deceit. This prompts the king's servant to extend his hand, from which dark fluid trickles, coalescing into a massive axe. Rock retorts that such comments are typically made by the weak. Grinning, he suggests doubling down. Caught off guard, the redhead shows no sign of backing down, instead pushing off with his foot, swiftly closing the gap between them. He leaps, swinging his sword as the man grips the axe handle, sliding it off his shoulder with a smirk, readying his own weapon. The elderly man prepares to attack in earnest. A moment later, everything is bathed in a brilliant blue light piercing through the shattered wooden door, followed by fog settling over the surroundings amid rising dust. As the fog begins to dissipate, figures lie battered, and bloodied warriors appear to have succumbed. Amidst the clearing smoke, a barely conscious figure emerges, clothed in tatters with a shattered sword. With a wry smile, the man apologizes for perhaps going too far, peering through the dissipating mist and asking if anyone had perished. The commander, beaten and unable to continue, simply inquires about his employer. His expression shifts as the servant grabs his chest and raises a fist, declaring that he will surely learn once they arrive. Gradually, the previously blurred vision sharpens, allowing a survey of the surroundings. Bask awakens, half-naked and bound in glowing chains, managing only a mumble about his whereabouts. He finds himself near a massive crystal, surrounded by towering columns, with 3 servants standing at a distance. The revived warrior is greeted by the restrained Bibi, who herself is trying to make sense of the situation, but neither of them understands why they are here at all. He wonders aloud if he did something to provoke this, while the red-haired man remains clueless about the attack by an unknown assailant. Achilles decides to enlighten them. Apparently, they have incurred the wrath of the Demon King, who ordered their presence here for some grievance. The archer vehemently protests, claiming they never even approached the Demon Lord's castle. Bask agrees, asking if there has been a mistake in their identification. Before summoning Bibi and demanding she dispel the spell binding them so he can deal with their captors swiftly, Bask is informed calmly that she lacks the ability to do so promptly. At this point, Rock interjects. Is the commander truly brave or just foolish? If he's still posturing, Beth silences the room as the king arrives. The hero steps through the open portal accompanied by the book, approaching the captives. He gazes proudly at them, remarking that it's been quite a while since their last encounter. The former squad members stare in astonishment at the unexpected appearance of the healer. The red-haired man himself still finds it hard to accept that this figure could be the Demon King. He bursts into laughter. Who would believe such absurdity? This must be staged. Everyone continues shouting insults at the man, demanding he greet his master before threatening him with another blow. And why is he looking down on them? The sheep devil, who had previously turned away, clenches her teeth. She swiftly turns around and with a precise strike, not only knocks out the man's teeth, but also rips his tongue out. Witnessing this, the heroes fall silent and tense up immediately. Meanwhile, the blond man notices the former warrior taking too long to grasp their situation. Now he will explain why they were brought here. This is the final floor of the Demon King's castle, where the legendary magic circle resides. He addresses Bibi, expecting her to understand. Every magician knows about this device. She looks surprised. Really? Yes, a magic circle that can bring back the dead using their life force. He intends to resurrect Maddie with it. The commander barely manages to shout, "Stop!" But the king's circle has already turned away. The circle beneath them glows bright pink. The former squad members begin yelling in agony, their bodies racked with unbearable pain, their words unintelligible. Base tries to shout something but only manages to say a single clear phrase, "MANHUA," before a beam of light grows brighter, engulfing all the hostages and rising into the sky. All that remains after the event is a thick cloud of smoke. Through the haze, a man tries to call out to a girl. When the smoke clears, only skeletons lie where moments ago there were hostages alive and still. The king himself looks on, bewildered by what has happened. This can't be real. Why did it go wrong? There was no mistake in the spell. Then he realizes that at that moment, the former commander shouted to him, "Mihai wa!" Soon the whole terrible truth dawns on him, affecting the healer deeply. Maybe somewhere out there, in an unknown place, they might still be alive. Achilles sits on a cliff. Looking down, he sees a village engulfed in flames. Suddenly aware, he leaps from the cliff. Men in specialized uniforms receive orders. Capture every elf, and kill those who resist without hesitation. They raise their weapons, letting out a battle cry as they charge toward the unfortunate elves. The elves immediately scatter, trying to flee. One elf is struck by an archer's arrow. Others lie lifeless on the ground. Some are already in chains. A couple who had been lying prone attempt to rise. Before them, a small elf suddenly appears, wielding a tiny dagger, tearfully pleading for mercy for his parents. The boy desperately begs them not to harm the elf. A man with a spear leaps forward, grinning, questioning if they truly believe they won't eliminate such an easy target. The spear inches closer towards the boy, who squints, resigned to his fate. However, no strike follows. He cautiously opens one eye to find the spear's tip halted by a black hand. This figure reveals itself as some kind of monstrous entity, frightening the boy, causing him to recoil. Yet, a servant of the Demon King interrupts, emerging from the flames, questioning their actions. The spearman barely manages to mutter "monster" before being asked who he is. Turning his head, the boy spots his entire squad nearby. Achilles approaches calmly, preferring not to fight, and requests the release of all hostages. The boy gazes at Achilles with astonishment. The detachment's commander immediately dismisses the notion, implying they hadn't come here just to leave empty-handed. Beth joins the redhead, inquiring about the situation. With the Demon King now aware of Lady Maddie's whereabouts, he might soon require their assistance, necessitating their presence. The leader among them seizes upon the phrase "Demon King," indicating his involvement in all this. Achilles responds that he wants to put an end to everything happening, and asks if she, grinning devilishly, could assist him in that regard. Before the green-haired person directs them, shouting at his subordinates to kill them. The men immediately charge at the servants with their guns, shouting. Meanwhile, Beth moves forward, completely unarmed. She approaches a warrior who is taken aback, then gently touches his forehead with her fingernail, wishing him sweet dreams. Instantly, the man's eyes pale and he falls lifeless to the ground. As she continues forward, the brunette effortlessly incapacitates everyone in her path with a gentle touch to their foreheads, causing almost the entire army to instantly die. Kicking off one shoe, she swiftly disables 3 warriors, moving so quickly they can't react before they also fall. Beth stands triumphantly amidst the fallen bodies, surprising the squad leader. Achilles notices how she subdued them without resorting to killing. He even admires her abilities, tightening his grip on his staff. Then, it's time for him to confront the Demon King in his castle, referred to as Rock by the blonde man. The hero decides to inquire about what the Demon King is like. After a brief pause, the blonde man answers implicitly, indicating his willingness to face the challenge. The hero considers what it means to kill. After a moment's thought, he responds that the Demon King smiles every day and conceals his true nature, making it difficult even for himself to know. All doubts about Abizaf's necessity are still persistent. A rock, if it could touch him, would surely shred him to pieces. Gripping his staff tightly in his palm, Achilles thrusts it forward, instantly conjuring a magic circle before him. Then, a clawed paw emerges from the ground. Suddenly, monsters materialize out of nowhere, the same kind that had earlier shielded the young elf from a spear attack. The commander and the remaining squad stared in shock at these unexpected creatures. Rock momentarily appears, asserting that touching him won't be as simple as they think. Meanwhile, Achilles continues to direct his attention towards the troops, as gargoyles emerge from 2 massive portals. The gargoyle, once a protector of the boy, turns away upon hearing swords clash. The monster readies itself for battle, while the young elf remains seated in shock, observing the unfolding combat. He turns towards the child, ensuring everything is all right in his own way. The monster meets the gaze of tear-filled eyes of the child. The boy smiles, catching the gargoyle off guard. The rest of the group charges towards the uniformed soldiers. One grabs someone's head with its clawed paw, hurling another's body as far as it can. Another rises unexpectedly, catching the man off guard before he can react. He swiftly descends, extending his leg and driving the man forcefully into the ground. This causes him to cough up blood and collapse, while another warrior watches in disbelief. Confronted by the monster's glare, it swiftly flaps its wings and vanishes from view. Moments later, It reappears right in front of its startled observer, catching them off guard. The gargoyle twists its tail, aiming the sharp tip towards another person's neck. But Achilles shouts that no one is to be killed, and the tail stops just short of the person's Adam's apple, leaving them visibly shaken. This visibly shocks the person, causing them to collapse. Death is displeased, shouting that unless they're killed now, there will be no end to them. The red-haired man awkwardly apologizes, stating they can't leave them like this. At this point, the commander finally speaks up, angrily calling everyone idiots. He reaches for his sword hilts, a greenish aura trailing from his arm as he draws them. He can't believe such a low-level monster was too much for them to handle. The Demon King's servant pauses, noting how the green-haired man crouches down, his swords glowing even brighter. Immediately, he commands everyone to dodge. Swiftly launching off the ground, the commander moves with incredible speed, catching the gargoyles off guard. Consequently, they are cleaved in half, blood dripping from the blades. The killer brushes it off with disgust. He calls it filthy and vows to destroy everyone present. His grip on the staff tightens as he menacingly calls out to him, his amber eyes locked on his target. Clearly, words are not his strong suit. The servant's weapon's rounded tip immediately glows with a pink light. A massive symbol materializes behind him, stunning the commander with its sheer size. Yet, nothing changes. The warriors and gargoyles remain standing together. The green-haired man grins knowingly. Indeed, nothing seems to have shifted. Suddenly, a colossal fist hurtles toward his face, emerging from a portal with incredible force. The warrior's body is sent flying several meters. Then, the fist slams into his back with renewed strength. The impact causes him to convulse, blood spilling. While still airborne, a dark purple portal materializes in front of his face. This time, not a fist emerges, but a full leg that drives him forcefully into the ground. The impact is so intense that nearby stone slabs crack apart. A shockwave shakes the area, shrouding everything in dust, including those who survive. The dust settles, revealing the aftermath of the attack. Something crunches under the pall, and after a few moments, the figure rises. The commander is still alive, clutching the leg with both hands. Did he truly believe he would succumb to such a monstrous attack? With a swift motion, the green-haired man throws him aside. Then, with great speed, he charges toward the servants, gripping his sword hilts tightly. As he nears, he considers that an unexpected attack from an unseen assailant isn't effective in ranged combat. However, the summoner's greatest vulnerability is exposed. Closing in rapidly, the commander halts a meter away and swings his swords. Their sharp ends are aimed precisely at another's neck. Hence, the greatest weakness lies in his own physical form. The sword's blade barely touches the neck of the Demon King's servant, by a mere few centimeters. A small black dot appears at the tip, spreading dark purple cracks outward. In the following moment, that tiny dot transforms into a massive portal. Emerging from it is the same hand that had gripped the green-haired man, now suddenly extended, maintaining a safe distance between the commander and its owner. Achilles calmly remarks that those attempting to approach him are no different from strangers. Did he truly believe everything would unfold so easily? Fingers immediately clamp down on someone else's small body, causing the warrior to scream in agony as joints and bones are fiercely pressured. Despite this, only a monstrous sound escapes his mouth before gradually giving way to wheezing, then quiet pleas for mercy. Suddenly, the servant notices movement in his peripheral vision and turns to confirm his suspicions. Before he can react, he encounters the same young boy clutching his head in fear. In frustration, the hand that had earlier exerted immense pressure on the warrior's body abruptly releases its grip. The unconscious figure collapses to the ground before vanishing altogether. Beth, observing everything, notices that her friend still harbors emotions. The blaze in the village was ultimately put out. The ropes that had tightly bound the hostages' bodies were finally removed. Achilles reassures the elves that everything is now fine, while the she-devil stands slightly apart. Observing this, They awkwardly express their gratitude, appearing completely disoriented, before one of the girls collapses to her knees entirely. She is afraid of him. The red-haired man promptly turns away from the newly liberated villagers, urging Beth that they need to return quickly. Without delay, the girl snorts and flaps her wings before following suit. Together, they move through the dark thicket of the forest in utter silence, when after some time, the same boy begins to trail behind them. The adults promptly notice his presence and halt. The man turns towards him immediately, questioning why he's following them since they're dangerous people. He should go back before getting lost. He and the girl turn around again, continuing their journey in the same silence. Later on, they hear footsteps behind them once more. Halting once again, Achilles gazes at the child for a long moment, tears still in his eyes, before his figure starts to blur into itself. The young elf reminds him of his own past. He purses his lips, finally relenting after a few seconds with a heavy sigh. There's nothing to be done, huh? The boy bowed his head, seemingly prepared for any reproach or punishment, but instead, the man extends his hand to him. Following a pair of sneakers, another child joins them. Now they walk together, a red-haired man holding an elf's hand, with a brunette a little further behind. Grinning, she poses a completely rhetorical question. Seeing this couple, what will the Demon King say? We are now shown other corridors inside the building, equally gloomy, in one of which stands a familiar green-haired man, head bowed, seemingly from the royal guard. He bows even lower, stating he has come for an audience with His Royal Highness. The man seated on the throne at the very start, visible from the castle, dismisses all formal greetings. How could the commander return to him empty-handed, without capturing a single elf? The guard immediately raises his head and apologizes, mentioning interference from certain individuals, then suggesting they were likely subordinates of the Demon King. The king merely grins and casually looks away, ordering the execution of all elves. Once they receive aid from the Demon King, harmful rumors can spread. Amber eyes fixate on the man once more. The new Demon King is also marked for elimination. He commands the legendary warrior to be summoned to him. Meanwhile, in a house deep within the forest, someone chops firewood, sending splinters flying in all directions. But the young man with red hair seems unconcerned. Then a girl calls out to him, affectionately calling him dear. The man turns his head and notices a large, expressionless man standing beside her. He declares his intention to issue a formal command to Mr. Trios. Amid complete silence and the girl's concerned expression, the redhead approaches the man who promptly hands him the document. Legendary warrior Trios, heed my decree. I command you to swiftly subdue the new Demon King who poses a threat. The contents of the decree were exactly as he read, yet his expression remains unchanged. Taking his axe, the man looks at the bride and assures her he will return. The redhead occasionally crumples the paper, gazing at the man's departing figure awkwardly. Trios always leaves her so calmly, and she herself understands the responsibility he carries. However, would it be selfish to ask for a promise to return? But that's all she can do. Bid farewell to his departing figure. A child playfully tugs at someone's cheek, annoying their companion who turns out to be a stern figure. The child sits on his shoulders, while the servant of the Demon King himself is enveloped in a blue aura and vanishes. Noticing the tense atmosphere, the glow observes, but then the bishop himself approaches, curious to know more about the boy. The redhead promptly explains that he's a child who survived an elf village attacked recently. His parents deceased, he decided to take the young blonde with him. The summoner lowers his head, seeking permission to depart. The blonde man remains silent, then sighs, agreeing to let them go as requested. Tilly was taken aback by this, but quickly surmised that the man, while Rock had already relieved the boy from his shoulders and let him play. The king observed as the elf pursued the owl, aiming to catch it while the latter protested to be left alone. Noise was bound to ensue. Then, a voice called out to the blonde man, prompting him to turn towards its source. He accidentally bumped into a man carrying something resembling the former lord's skulls on his shoulders. The man declared his readiness to proceed on behalf of someone. He was the right-hand man of the Demon King's flame wielder. He clarified that the destination was farther than anticipated, hence the extended duration. The remaining attendants appeared noticeably cautious, while the healer reassured that all was well, emphasizing the need for precise actions. Having agreed, the flammable entity vanished instantly from view, evaporating on the spot. The king felt somewhat uneasy giving any directives, but it was clear he would manage. The famed warrior possessed immense strength but lacked the inclination for heroics, choosing instead a life of seclusion. It was rumored he emerged only in dire situations. Answering the king's call, the man navigated through the barracks bustling with soldiers of various specialties. Red promptly began outlining his plan to select members for the group, slated to overthrow the Demon King, advising everyone to steer clear. Trios intended to confront the challenge himself, beginning with the crucial task of selecting a healer. Amber eyes scanned the gathering, eventually colliding with a pink-haired girl who seemed indifferent. However, the longer he observed her, the brighter a pink aura began to emanate around her. Without hesitation, he approached her and, placing a hand on her head, declared that she would be the healer. He then selected a barker after the night squad commander, followed by others until the team was complete. Trios announced they would depart the following day, urging them to bid farewell to their families. Payment was immediate upon departure, with double upon successful conquest. His attention was diverted by a commanding voice ordering him to halt. The blond man protested loudly, claiming to be the most renowned marksman and questioning why he wasn't chosen. He demanded to know the criteria for group selection and expressed disbelief that a stranger with an old axe could be a legendary warrior. The man fixed him with a stern gaze, holding his silence before gesturing with his weapon towards the audacious shooter. Startled, the shooter reached for his bow and arrows, unsure of the redhead's intentions, and asked if he wanted to fight. Trios continued to stare at him, warning him not to move. The shooter blinked in surprise as the warrior audibly drew a breath through his teeth. With a swift motion, he swung his axe, striking the ground with such force that it shook the surroundings and sent a shockwave rippling through the area. The impact was so intense that it nearly knocked everyone off balance. A brilliant yellow beam burst through the entire structure. The archer unleashes a powerful strike, sending up a cloud of dust around him. When he looks back, he sees that the once intact stone wall has been sliced in half. Turning around, he is astonished to see a massive cut running parallel to his stance, extending not just a few meters, but several kilometers ahead, creating a deep chasm that cuts across the entire mountain. The girl chosen as the healer stares in disbelief, murmuring that he sliced through an entire mountain, while the bark and the commander are also in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. The archer, equally stunned, remains silent as the legendary hero begins to speak. Even such immense power is futile in the Demon King's castle. The castle is full of unknown traps and magic that could bind them. That's why archers like him would only be a hindrance, not even fit as a meat shield. Pure strength is the ultimate weapon against demons. The hero walks away, sharply remarking that someone as strong as him will be sufficient. He continues through the silent crowd until the healer calls out to him. The redhead stops, meeting her gaze as she asks if he is truly a legendary warrior. Back in the Demon King's castle, the owl loudly informs the king of a problem. A legendary warrior has been summoned to defeat them. The former healer, now tasked with healing, asks again and then smiles, saying it's a remarkable nickname. Rock, standing a bit apart, notes that none of the people with that nickname were ever truly strong. The owl insists, however, that this man sliced an entire city in half, so he might be very powerful. The king's servant, clearly worried by this, immediately addresses his master, asking to leave the legendary warrior to him. The guy blinks in surprise, looking at his ward as if not understanding his intentions, while the servant's eyes burn with determination and a bright smile. Surrendering, the Lord allows him to handle it, but insists it be done quietly. Rock bows, saying he understands, then vanishes instantly, leaving only the Lord and the owl blinking in surprise. The owl tenses up, eyes narrowing in amazement. This is very strange. We then see that night has already fallen at the inn where the heroes are staying. The pink-haired girl, now a healer, sleeps peacefully before wincing as a bright blue light shines on her face. She squints, rubs her eyes, and sits up, noticing the bright light coming from the window near her bed. She looks out, confused about what could be happening in the middle of the night, before her eyes widen in shock. Right outside the window, she sees Rock and the legendary warrior facing each other on the street. The legendary warrior remarks that it's surprising the Demon King's servant came to him personally. The blonde man, grinning, responds that he was instructed to carry out his task as discreetly as possible. The redhead is only grateful that the idea of harming others didn't cross his mind. Rock's grin widens further as he disregards these formalities, narrowing his eyes to focus solely on the man before him. A radiant and fiery aura surrounds him, clearly demonstrating his strength. The blonde man's eyes gleam with excitement as he declares his eagerness to fight with all his might. Trios tightens his grip on his axe handle before uttering a simple attack command. They stand for a brief moment in the crater beneath them before the battle begins. Then simultaneously, swiftly and abruptly, as if on cue, they charge at each other. Rock pulls his arm back, preparing to swing, just as a black liquid begins to flow from his veins, which soon transforms not into his usual axe, but into a genuine sword intended to deliver a fatal blow to his opponent. But with a grin, he swings his axe and dodges, the slashing sword, raising his weapon in hand. Fortunately, Rock reacts quickly, pulling out his other hand from which a golden-hued shield with a shiny emblem emerges from his veins and capillaries, deflecting the axe blade, which shatters into pieces, causing the man to leap back, staring in surprise at the shield fragments. Damn, this is an extraordinary level of power. At that moment, Trio grasps the handle of his humble weapon with both hands and swings it forcefully from the opposite direction. Luckily, the Demon King's servant manages to spot this movement in time. He swiftly lifts his bent, clawed knee and with a sharp movement of his pelvis, deflects the blade with his foot, causing it to land a few meters away from their skirmish. For some reason, the weapon lands a couple of meters away from their ongoing fight. Both adversaries immediately propel themselves off the ground, hurtling towards each other midair with fists ready, each intending to either eliminate the other or anyone else present. When their fists do eventually contact, Rock's physique is so powerful that is forcefully propelled away from the shockwave by a few meters, but he uses his own claws to stop himself from falling, while the redhead is rapidly approaching him. However, the servant grins for no apparent reason, and it is so snarky that it is safe to assume that he has come up with something. With a sudden bending in half, the blonde guy pierces the stone with his palms, causing it to lift up until something blue lights from below. His throat releases a choked grunt, which is the final push. The path to him is blocked by the enormous mountain that rises to the sky just in front of that particular stone. However, the fabled fighter was not even going to quit. Before his fist smashes on the cobblestone with all the drugs, he swings even harder. The improvised top instantly begins to fracture everywhere from the point of impact until it crumbles completely. For a split second. However, there's no Rock in her wake. Oh no. From there, he charges at his opponent, ready to deliver a punch. He was having a blast. The distance between the knuckles and another person's face is a few millimeters. It's time for Trios to retire for the night. It appears that the fist is going to pass its aim. However, Trio dodges as though it didn't cost him a thing. And after that, he squeezes his palm, causing it to light up brightly yellow, almost like fire. With his hand moving to the side and the opponent catching him in the ribs, Rock does not have time to respond, observing as if in slow motion. The Demon King's servant opens his eyes in amazement as soon as the knuckles strike the side, gripping his teeth till blood starts to pool from within. The guy launches his opponent several tens of meters into the air with one such powerful stroke. 642, and Rock's presence does not go in vain since the higher he ascends, the more clearly his wings emerge from his shoulder blades. 643, which enables him to dive and stay in the air, cutting down on their recent separation to the barest minimum. 644, throwing his leg again and scrolling in parallel. The humor has ended. The blond man's foot is about to strike the fabled warrior in the face with all of his might and rage. If not, hammer him like a nail into the ground. However, he is able to quickly place a block using both hands. Rock persisted in pressing, though, and did so with such intensity that a blue beam of light appeared in the sky shortly after their battle. Due to the extreme stress, the red-haired man appears unharmed, but the dust that has risen from their altercation is the sole evidence of a recent incident. The Demon King's servant is breathing heavily, blood streaming from his lips, bewildered at how his opponent's body could endure such punishment. Suddenly, his own body gives out, as Trios grabs his calf, squeezing and pulling him closer, before turning and hurling Rock with a sharp motion, sending him flying backwards, crashing into a huge boulder, sparks flying, and raising clouds of dust and smoke into the air. It seems the battle is over with the legendary warrior as the victor. But no, the blond guy flies out of the smoke, barely scratched, and charges at his opponent once again, swinging his arm, determined to inflict some damage. But Trios blocks blow after blow with his palms, rendering each attack futile. At some point, the Demon King's servant starts to realize, though he doesn't want to admit it, that he cannot win this fight by force. In terms of strength and speed, this man is clearly superior to him. The silhouette he attacked so relentlessly simply blurs before disappearing altogether, reappearing behind him. Rock, taken aback, doesn't understand how the redhead could disappear so quickly. He turns around, aiming to deliver another punch, but a palm grabs his hand, squeezing it firmly. The opponent grunts, gripping the blonde's fist, and then notices something still feels strange. It seems he has the ability to forge his own weapons. After losing his axe, he had to rely on martial arts. Initially, he only used his fists, even managing to stand his ground, eventually grinning and claiming he wanted to fight barehanded since he was left without a weapon. Is that true? The expression on the redhead's face darkens. Did the brat underestimate him? They both leap to the side, narrowly avoiding the axe embedded in the ground. It's his fault for losing his weapon before such a dangerous battle. The axe rises from the earth. From now on, let the Demon King's henchman show his full strength. The blade ignites with an almost hellish flame, its tip pointing straight at someone's chest. Then Trios himself does the same, their turquoise eyes locked. The guy stares at his opponent for a few seconds, flames dancing behind him, before he quietly sighs, closes his eyes and reaches for his sword, which also lay on the ground before. Maybe this place will mark the end. The man squints, focusing on the rock, noticing his opponent's attitude towards the fight has changed noticeably. His stance has improved, achieving a perfect balance of defense and attack, and his attitude towards demonstrating his skills. Their eyes meet for a split second before the Demon King's servant rushes towards the man. They both swing their weapons, one burning infernally red, the other bright turquoise, before the blades of the sword and axe collide. The clash is so furious that a bright yellow flash illuminates everything within several meters, followed by a column of smoke, dust, and flames spreading across the entire battlefield. The axe, still held by the trio, shatters and cracks under the force of the blow, then crumbles completely, leaving only a wooden handle in the legendary warrior's hand. The man looks at his broken weapon, acknowledging that his opponent performed well, managing to inflict some stabs and cuts. As the smoke gradually dissipates, Rock's battered and bloody face emerges, swearing before lowering his head to examine his own body. Once the dust settles again, he stands beaten, cut and bloody, with no clothes left except his pants and one wing half intact. The redhead mutters that he is only pretending to be strong. If he had recognized their difference from the start and drawn his weapon, he might have had a chance. Reckless and foolish. Despite the pain, the king's servant only grins, saying this isn't his style, and if they fought again, the result would be the same. Therefore, Rock raises his head, smiling at his opponent and asking to be killed. The man looks at him for a moment before clenching his hand into a fist, preparing to deliver a crushing blow. The blond man lowers his head, ready to accept his fate, silently apologizing to his lord for letting him down. A whistle of air is heard before someone else's palm lands a firm slap on the back of his head. Trios says he knew the fool would say that. The blonde is taken aback as the legendary warrior begins to explain, saying his duty is to defeat the Demon King, and he has no desire to kill Rock. Rock, dissatisfied, frowns and shouts that the man in front of him is a jerk, claiming he could easily get up and kill him. The redhead sighs softly and utters a single word, "Knight," causing the guy's eyes to widen. Loyal to your master, destined to die on the battlefield for your beliefs. Die if you lose. He has already admitted defeat, and the warrior knows the servant won't attack him. He respects the enemy as shown immediately. To a keen eye, the Baroque knight, his pride, already in the Demon King's castle, stands as a half-naked and still beaten servant. The owl jumps up to him, asking what happened and wanting to send him for treatment immediately, but the guy doesn't listen. Walking further down the corridor of the throne room, he passes Beth and Achilles, stopping before his lord, who sits on the throne. Kneeling, he rests one knee and fist on the floor, and Rock declares with complete firmness that he has been defeated as a knight and must leave the demon castle for a while. Scarlet eyes meet those of the stranger, as if some unspoken thoughts pass between them. Noticing the small smile on the servant's lips, the king calmly orders him to go. Thanking his lord, he immediately rises and heads towards the exit, while everyone stares at his back, bewildered. As soon as the tense silence is broken by the door slamming shut, the owl tenses up, not understanding what just happened, while the little elf who had been sitting next to him starts crying because Uncle Rock is gone. The chick immediately orders him to be silent, but the boy continues to cry. Achilles unexpectedly comments that the Rock he knew would have chosen death over admitting defeat, though she responds that such a reaction means it was a complete defeat from the enemy's point of view. The servant posed no threat, so they decided to let him go. Does this mean a strong enemy is already approaching them? Outside, the blond man's whole body trembles as he remembers how the recent conversation ended. Trios told him he had just one request, since he had already been defeated, to let him leave the Demon King's castle, and if he refused, to throw away his pride and kill him right then. Rock, of course, didn't do this. Back in the castle, with a gloomy expression on his face, the king realizes that this is now his battle.